How much money do you have to spend before you become rich? Depends on what you mean by rich. If you're talking about being wealthy enough to never have to work again, then the answer is somewhere between $7 and $8 million. But if you want to be the richest person in history, you would need to have over $468 billion in today's money. And this man did it 2,500 years ago. In 560 BC, there was a king who ruled an empire stretching from modern-day Turkey all the way to Egypt, and he was the richest man who ever existed. His name was Croesus, and he has a place in history for two reasons. First, he was the last king of Lydia, a civilization located in what is now Western Turkey. And second, he's the reason we have the expression rich as Croesus. But how did Croesus get so rich? How did his wealth compare to Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk? And why doesn't anyone remember him today? Here's the story of King Croesus, the richest man who ever lived. Croesus's kingdom wasn't always rich. When his father died, Croesus inherited a small but powerful kingdom. The territory of Lydia was strategically placed at the crossroads of several major trade routes. The locals were expert metalworkers, and their horses were prized across the ancient world. But next to them were the even more powerful kingdoms of Persia, Lydia's greatest rival. So the first thing Croesus had to do as king was make sure his kingdom didn't collapse. Fortunately, he was up to the challenge. Croesus ruled like a god over his people. He led them to victory against Persia and expanded his territory, conquering several Greek city-states along the way. But the people of Lydia weren't just grateful for their king's military success. They also loved him for his economic policies. According to Herodotus, the Greek historian who wrote about Croesus's life, the king introduced a new currency that made trade easier and encouraged foreign merchants to come to Lydia and do business. What's more, he established a mint where people could exchange their old coins for new ones, which helped boost the local economy and further cemented his legacy as a benevolent leader. But after Croesus's death, the Lydians lost their independence. Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, conquered Lydia and absorbed it into his realm. However, the Persians didn't have as much respect for the memory of Croesus as they did other kings. In fact, when Cyrus entered the Lydian capital city of Sardis, he ordered every inhabitant capable of bearing arms to be put to death and enslaved the rest. Croesus might not have left behind a dynasty of kings, but his legacy lived on in another form, the written word. The Greek historian Herodotus visited Croesus in Sardis shortly after the Persian invasion and learned the story of his rise to power and wealth. And in his book, The History of Lydia, Herodotus included a famous passage about the riches of King Croesus. It goes like this. There was a man who was richer than any other mortal, Croesus, son of Myrmenadus, king of Lydia. Even the issues of the abundant earth did not keep pace with his wealth, nor did his revenues lag behind his expenditures. He spent lavishly for the adornment of his city, building temples and sanctuaries and furnishing them with a multitude of costly gifts. From this and other accounts of Croesus's life, historians got the impression that he showered gold on everyone around him. A famous anecdote tells the story of how Croesus sent half of his treasure to the Oracle of Delphi to bribe her into saying that he was the luckiest man alive. But the god Apollo took offense to this, and instead said that someone else would become luckier than Croesus. Of course, that someone else ended up being Cyrus, who used his newly acquired wealth to conquer the rest of the known world. And while Cyrus is remembered as a great conqueror, historians have forgotten about the man whose wealth made him famous in the first place. But how much wealth are we talking about? Let us go back to that question about how much money you have to spend before you become rich. We already answered it for most people. But if you want to be the richest person in history, you would need to have over $468 billion in today's money. That's about 3 times more than Jeff Bezos, the second richest person in the world. And if you want to be richer than Elon Musk, you would need to double that amount. But how did Croesus do it? The secret to understanding Croesus's staggering wealth lies in one word: coinage. After Croesus came to power, he reorganized the finances of Lydia and minted coins with his own face on them. This not only helped to boost the economy of Lydia, but gave us an idea of just how rich he was. You see, all the coins that were minted during his reign have the same face value. And since we know how many of these coins survived until today, we can get a good idea of how much his net worth would have been. Unfortunately, none of the coins minted by Croesus are currently in circulation. So you can't simply count up all the coins in existence to figure out how much he was worth. Instead, pneumatists use the population of Lydia at the time, estimates of the number of coins per person, and the average value of the coins to estimate how much the Lydian treasury contained. One such estimate was done by Ralph Walker, an American pneumatist, who published his findings in the Journal of Ancient History in 2002. According to his calculations, Croesus had a personal wealth of around $19.6 billion in today's money. Add to that the wealth held by Lydia's treasury, and Croesus's total net worth comes to a staggering $468 billion. Of course, that's just one estimate based on the assumption that everyone in Lydia had equal access to the nation's wealth. But, in reality, Croesus probably hoarded most of it for himself. With that in mind, it's safe to say that Croesus was easily the richest person in history, even if he isn't remembered as one of the greatest rulers. Some historians argue that Croesus was lucky to become king when he did. You see, Lydia was sitting on a powder keg of tensions between the Greeks and the Persians, and Croesus became famous for doing little more than staying out of the resulting explosion. But if that's the case, why is his name remembered thousands of years later? One possible explanation is that Croesus didn't just get lucky with his timing. He created his own luck. He was a visionary leader who saw the potential of Lydia and worked hard to make it a reality. His introduction of a new currency and his decision to mint coins with his own face on them were bold moves that paid off in a big way. In fact, it's as likely that Croesus would have been even richer if he hadn't been so generous with his wealth. He loved to throw gold around like it was nothing, and he even reportedly bribed the Oracle of Delphi in an attempt to secure his good fortune. But even after giving away billions of dollars worth of gold, Croesus still had more money than anyone else in history. While Croesus may not have been the greatest king or the most visionary leader, he was certainly the luckiest. And whether or not you believe in luck, one thing is for sure: King Croesus was the richest man who ever lived. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.